Welcome to Legal Nurse Podcast. This is your spot to get inspiration, tips, stories, and guidance to help you in your legal nurse consulting practice. I'm Pat Iyer, the host of Legal Nurse Podcast since 2016. We are among the top 5% of all podcasts in the world in terms of longevity and sharing information consistently week after week with legal nurse consultants. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Well, welcome wherever you are. We're glad that you had an opportunity to join us for this power session. This is an opportunity for you to ask some questions. We'll be putting some questions in the chat and asking you to respond to them as we focus on mastering an in-person interview with an attorney. If you are with us now in our live call, you'll be receiving by email a tip sheet on mastering an interview by Zoom. There are some commonalities when you are interviewing with an attorney over Zoom, and yet some very specific things, particularly related to the technology, that it's important for you to be able to attend to make sure that you're representing yourself in a professional way. Hint, don't do the interview in front of your queen-size bed, for example. We'll talk about lighting and microphone and the environment that you should be setting up or should have already set up if you're going to be working from home and doing Zoom calls with attorneys. That will provide to you as an email after this session for those who are here live. That's your reward for being here. I'd like to start by introducing Barbara. I know that not all of you know her background, nor do you know mine. Barbara Levin has been an expert witness for at least 20 years and maybe longer. She works on orthopedic and medical surgical cases. She has her LNCC. She is certified as a med-surg nurse. She's a certified orthopedic nurse. And she was recently honored by her professional association and named as a fellow of the Orthopedic Nurses Association, an honor that they designate to only a limited number of people. She was one of 5 this year who received that, based on her accomplishments and her work with the association. Barbara also served as a volunteer for the state of Massachusetts on the Board of Nursing, and that included a period of 3 years as chair, where her responsibilities included looking at cases involving nurses and nursing schools in the state to determine if any disciplinary action should be taken against them. And Barbara and I have co-authored many books and co-moderated and planned many online conferences and courses for legal nurse consultants.
Thank you so much, Pat. And I have the honor of introducing Pat Iyer, who is a true trailblazer in the field of legal nurse consulting. Pat built and led a multi-million-dollar legal nurse consulting company, and she went on to become one of the most successful and respected legal nurse coaches in the profession. She is also a past president of the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants, and also what I would consider the most prolific legal nurse consultant in the world, with an extraordinary wealth of knowledge, publications, mentorship that truly have shaped the careers of countless nurses. And she has assisted hundreds, thousands of attorneys as well. Pat continues to be a very motivated leader, very knowledgeable, and truly an innovator in advancing the role for legal nurse consultants. She helps to set the standard for excellence in our profession, and she, in addition to that, she has a very successful podcast that reaches out to more than 100 countries of people literally all around the world. So we truly are privileged to have her joining us here today. Of course, she is co-hosting today's power session, but it's truly an honor to work together with her.
Thank you, Barbara. Let's dive right into the topic that we wanted to focus on today, which is the in-person meetings, interviews with attorneys when they contact a legal nurse consultant, or you contact them and you're successful in arranging for an interview in which the attorney wants to talk with you about your skills and your background.
Well, I have a question for you, Pat. The first question for today is, why is an in-person attorney meeting a critical moment for a legal nurse consultant?
It is a sales opportunity and a job interview. And I'm not necessarily talking about a job interview for an in-house position. I'm talking about as an independent legal nurse consultant, an attorney may suggest that you come to the office so that the attorney can meet you in person. This is often something that particularly older attorneys love to do. The people in the baby boomer population like to meet people in person that they will be working with, as compared to some of the younger attorneys who would prefer to text you and communicate by phone and not have an in-person meeting. Most of the baby boomer attorneys, in my experience, are also the successful senior attorneys who make hiring decisions. So it's very comfortable for them to have you come in so that they can talk with you. They can evaluate your professionalism, how confident you are, and what you can bring to them in terms of value. Not all attorneys understand what legal nurse consultants do. You encounter this when they say, but I've got a paralegal. Why do I need a nurse? And you point out the difference between being a nurse and a paralegal. Your healthcare background is something that a paralegal doesn't have and may miss some of the nuances because the paralegal doesn't have that background. It's your opportunity to position yourself to show the attorney why it's valuable for you to work with the attorney. And clearly, Barbara, this is a high stakes opportunity that requires some preparation. What kinds of things can you advise our listener to do in order to be ready for this experience?
Everyone should consider doing some research on the attorney client or potential client that you are going to be meeting with. What type of law are they practicing? What is the firm size? And take a look at what are their past big cases, as well as their education and training. If you, as example, enjoy working on personal injury cases or medical malpractice cases, and that is the area that you want to focus more of your attention on, then you certainly want to know if this firm and this attorney has that interest, that common interest as you do. But there are other areas that you as a legal nurse can practice in based on your education as a nurse. And these include working on, for example, you can also work with a trust and estates attorney reviewing wills. I know you may wonder, well, what kind of role would I have there? Well, there are actually a few instances that I have reviewed a few wills and medical records of the individual who had passed away. Having that keen knowledge of being a nurse, I was able to find within the medical records on one instance that the individual changed their will the day before they passed away, and they were under the heavy influence of multiple narcotics and sedatives. So there were a lot of questions there. And, certainly this was a contentious situation with the family and the individual whom all of the everything was being left to. But in the end, my role of reviewing that was able to support the fact that the family was very involved with their loved one. They were there almost every day. This abrupt change of changing the will to actually, it was changed to, I think it was a cleaning person of the individual's home. Certainly, in the end, the decision was for everything to go back to the way that it was, with the way that it was intended to, was to leave things to the family. So that's a unique area that you can practice in. Also, I'm sure many of you have heard about attending independent medical exams, and that's where your knowledge as a nurse and healthcare provider can play an integral role with observation and attendance and communication with what you're observing at that examination and with your potential attorney client. So you want to know about their firm size because perhaps you're meeting with one attorney and he'll be able to share your name with other attorneys within the law firm. So certainly the power of, sharing forward, working with one attorney can be great that he shares your name with other attorneys in the firm. I would suggest that you take a look at LinkedIn as well to learn more about the individual that you are going to be meeting with. Take a look at the firm website to gain more knowledge. And oftentimes on these websites, you will hear, or I should say, you will read about some of their cases in where they were successful, and take a look at, are these areas that you indeed want to practice and assist in? What types of cases? What types of focus were those cases? Is this a plaintiff firm? Is this a defense firm? It's really important that you know that when you're walking in the door. You can also take a look at martindale.com. That's another resource. And of course, social media. So it's important to understand their likely needs based on their practice area. So if you want to serve as an expert witness, certainly, promoting, for example, if you're a med-surg nurse or an orthopedics nurse and the firm does a lot of personal injury cases, you can certainly address those types of cases with your knowledge, education, and training about what transpired in, let's say, the slip and fall down a flight of stairs, or let's say a fall in a supermarket, and knowing the mechanisms of a fall and how, if you fall forward, how your hands would be placed versus if you were falling backwards, or perhaps you're falling that a deck broke and the individual tumbled to the ground 2 stories. You'll be able to address and educate the attorney about all of the injuries that were sustained and assist them in identifying long-term, short-term goals for the healing process. So those are a few examples for you. Now, Pat, what should everyone know about the senior attorneys before the meeting?
And I'm going to go through some characteristics of those individuals who are likely going to be the ones who are doing the interviews. As you hear these characteristics, if you've gone through an interview or talked with a senior attorney over the phone and you recognize these characteristics, put yes in the chat when you hear something that you've encountered from a senior attorney. They are strategic thinkers. They are thinking long-term rather than short-term. They may be founders of the law firm. They are focused on the survival and the growth of the firm. So they are looking beyond just the immediate needs, but what the firm should do moving forward. They know they need to spend money on well-qualified experts. This is a better investment than looking for the person who way undercharges, perhaps because they don't know any better, perhaps because they're desperate. They know that there is truth in you get what you pay for. They respect professionalism. They expect you to act accordingly. When you are exhibiting at a conference, you can recognize the senior attorneys because they're typically wearing suits and ties. Some of their other colleagues who are associates are in shorts and t-shirts in the summer, but the senior attorneys are very conscious of their appearance. If they know you're coming into the law firm, by the way, and they have an interview with you, they're very likely to put on their suit and tie. They may be dressed casually other times, but when they see you, they are very likely going to be dressed for the part. And of course, when I talk about suit and tie, I'm referring to men. There are increasingly women in senior partnership positions who are dressed in business appropriate clothing as well. Their time is very valuable. They want you to get to the point. They want you to be efficient. When you talk to a senior attorney, it's much like talking to a physician. Nurse, why are you calling me? Well, there's been a change in the patient's condition. All right, tell me what it is. Get your bullet points together. You're communicating quickly. You're not rambling all over your direct and your responses. That's something that senior attorneys value because their time is so precious. They want to know how you can save them time. What is the advantage of working with you? How will you make their time patterns better for them? They are powerful decision makers. They can act quickly. They don't necessarily have to go to somebody above them, although there is often a managing partner in the firm who will look at some of these relationships and fee agreements. Senior partners are the decision makers. And they also rely on recommendations from their peers. If Joe has told Tom that you're a valuable adjunct to Joe's law firm and Tom ought to give you a try, that recommendation carries a lot of weight as opposed to the cold call, the cold visit, the cold email, the cold letter. And they exude confidence. Senior partners, senior attorneys have been around the block. They have been burned more than once on cases. They don't want to be burned. They want you to confidently share with them how you can make their lives easier. And I see lots of yeses in the chat. So I'm seeing that we are connecting with people who are watching this program or listening to it or will be listening to it on our podcast, that these qualities resonate. Given all this, Barbara, you're going in for an interview with a senior attorney. What kind of mindset should you have as you begin that meeting?
Well, initially you may think, oh gosh, I'm so nervous. How do I present myself? Well, the way you present yourself is by going in with confidence, having confidence in your value and your services. This is huge. And having confidence in the knowledge of the healthcare system. You've been working in the healthcare system. Share it and show it. And when you're going into this meeting, I encourage you not to be the yes person sitting there saying, yes, 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 yes. I encourage you to participate actively in the dialogue. Be prepared to ask questions and don't pretend to have knowledge that you don't possess. So when you are going in, and if an attorney is asking you to perform perhaps a role that perhaps you have not participated in, one of your responses is, let's say, for example, he asks you, do you have a stereotactic neurosurgeon as one of your experts? Well, your answer may be no, because certainly that's a specialized area. And your response can be, I would be very happy to assist you in locating the specific specialist that you need for your case. I need to know more about your case so I can share that forth to help you look for that expert. Another wonderful thing about our field of legal nurse consulting is collaborating with other legal nurses and communicating with them. We have a wealth of knowledge with legal nurses across the country, and many are willing to share forth experts and knowledge with you. So if you can't find someone, don't hesitate to reach out and asking your legal nurse colleagues if they'd be willing to share with you. And certainly you can and should call that potential expert and talk to them about your case. So those are a few suggestions. I also want you to be clear on your boundaries and don't undercut your rates. If you have a potential attorney client saying, well, I have a paralegal and the paralegal charges me $35 an hour and you want to charge me more, I will hire you if you will consider matching at the $35 an hour rate. Please don't undercut your rates because your knowledge is what the attorney is going to find is very unique when reviewing these medical records. Your insight, your ability to interpret the medical records, and your ability to determine, gosh, we are missing some records here. This is what I'm seeing. You've given me a file of 87 pages for a hospitalization that was 4 days. I know that there should be more medical records, and these are all the areas that are missing within the medical records. So you have a unique role and a very valuable role as a legal nurse consultant. So please enter into that meeting with confidence and bring your questions to your potential client as well. Pat, when we're talking about this, what is the invisible legal nurse consulting hook? What can they do?
If you're not familiar with the term, think of it as something that's sort of right in your sternum area. That's where I envision it. That says, oh, I'm a nurse. I can help you. Your hook is something that's very effective when you're taking care of patients because you're ready to do whatever it takes to make them comfortable to meet their needs. In a business sense, working with attorneys, you have the same hook, but you have to be careful. Barbara just gave an example of undercutting your rates. I went to an attorney's office in Pennsylvania to deliver a mug that he had won as a prize in a drawing when I was exhibiting. And he said to me, I have a great idea. I'll give you a case, and if you find something, I'll pay you. And I said, I don't think that's a great idea because I bill on an hourly basis and my billing is not contingent upon the results. And I can't make that kind of an arrangement with you. Oh, I'm not talking about sharing my fee and contingency. I'm talking about you getting paid if you find something. I said, I can't do that. And I left without any work and never got work from that firm. And that was okay. The LNC hook, who's uninformed, would say, oh, that gives me a chance to get my foot in the door. Well, no, you're undercutting your value by agreeing to that kind of an arrangement. You want to be helpful, you want to be needed, you want to serve, but that makes you vulnerable to undesirable attorneys or arrangements that are not going to serve your needs. An attorney called me and said, I need an orthopedic surgeon who will give a report by next Wednesday that's favorable to my client. I said, that would be a rush job and I could work on that for you. And we can arrange to get the retainer through a wire transfer or a credit card or an overnight check. And he said, oh, but you don't understand. I'll pay you only if he agrees with my position. No, it's another variation of the contingency arrangement that we don't want and we will not participate in. I said, I can't arrange to do that with you. He said, well, I don't want to pay him if he doesn't say what I want him to say. I'm thinking, you don't really understand how this works, Mr. Attorney. You are in this interview qualifying the attorney as much as the attorney is qualifying you. I sat in a library next to a senior attorney's office one time. He asked me to come in and organize records. And I heard him on the phone talking to vendors who were trying to collect bills from him. And he was making excuses. And I'm listening to him wiggle around to avoid having to commit to paying the outstanding bills that he had. I'm qualifying this guy. I'm thinking, I don't really want to work with somebody who's being the subject of dunning phone calls from vendors. Turned me off on working with him. Think of this finally in terms of, do they pass the airplane test? The airplane test is something that one of my attorney clients explained. Would you like to sit on a plane with this attorney sitting next to you and go across country? If you would find it difficult to be in this attorney's presence for 5 or 6 or 7 hours, then that's a person is shooting up some red flags. In the attorney world, they refer to the airplane test, and I've just borrowed it, as a plaintiff. Would you be willing to sit next to a plaintiff across the country? And they use that as a test to whether that person is going to be attractive to a jury, because juries don't like to give money to people that they don't personally relate to or feel an affinity to. So I'd like you to put in the chat as we go on to the next question of whether you have this invisible hook in you. And if you recognize that you've got that hook, how might it affect your relationships with attorneys? And that can be both positive and negative. Do you have a hook? And if you do, how would it affect your relationships with attorneys? Barbara, let's talk about, in the interview, building up rapport with attorneys. I've just mentioned the airplane test and the fact that you'd want to work with people who you'd be really comfortable with going across the country in an airplane with. Tell us about how you can deliberately and consciously work on building rapport with an attorney during an interview.
So I suggest that you arrive early for your meeting. And I'm not suggesting an hour early, but about 15 minutes early, and dress professionally. The way you dress certainly will be what sets forth, what the attorney sees you when you're walking in the door or when he comes out from his office and sees you waiting for him. What are you wearing? So I have seen some very interesting attire while attending meetings in the attorney offices. And one individual actually had a very low-cut, bright red dress on with extremely low cleavage. And let's just say she was sharing too much of her body there, as well as a very, very short dress, only up to her, I think it was only to her fingertips. So that really does not portray somebody that is looking to work together with an attorney in a professional manner. Take a look at your surroundings as well. Is it peaceful in there? Take a look at the pictures that are hanging on the walls. Perhaps they are sharing some of the verdicts and outcomes of their cases. Perhaps they have framed those, the articles or billboards in their office. Please be pleasant to everyone you meet in the office, but not just there. When you're entering the office building, you never know who's in the elevator with you. So be pleasant to them because, as I said, it could be somebody from the office or it could be one of their clients. Look for personal items when you're in the attorney office. Look at the awards, perhaps some family photos, hobbies. Perhaps you connect on a level because you participate in some of the same activities that the attorney does that you could comment on. Please be respectful of with the attorney in all aspects of behavior. For example, avoid using profanity. Now, while this sounds probably obvious to many of you, I have seen and heard legal nurses in an office, and they are so casual and they are throwing around a variety of four-letter expletives. It's just not becoming. It is not professional. Use active listening. Don't interrupt the attorney when he is speaking to you about what he foresees your relationship can be or identifying what his needs are. And reflect back on what you hear and certainly add comments to it and ask questions. An attorney, again, does not want to just hear from you, yes, yes, yes. He wants a dialogue. What can you, as the legal nurse consultant, offer that's valuable to him and participation on the cases? I encourage you to stay attentive and engaged and, certainly display your personality and sense of humor. Certainly that is important. Pat, if we talk about questions, what 5 or 6 questions should legal nurses ask the attorney when uncovering their so-called pain?
I'm Pat Iyer, and I invite you to join us at our November 13, 14, and 15, 2025 LNC Success Online Conference. We have a sterling group of nurses, LNCs, attorneys, and physicians who are joining us to share their knowledge to help you grow your LNC business. One of our featured speakers is Christine Dorman, who is a critical care nurse practitioner. Nurse practitioners play a critical role in healthcare, but as their responsibilities grow, so do the risks of malpractice claims. In this engaging session, Christine will share with you some of the tips and issues affecting nurse practitioner liability. She'll break down some of the common liability issues that NPs face. Drawing on real case examples, Christine will highlight key risk factors, including misdiagnosis, failure to monitor, and medication errors, as well as the financial impact of malpractice claims. She's going to provide practical tips to help LNCs analyze NP-related cases, identify deviations from the standard of care, and assess whether claims have merit. With over 30 years of nursing experience and a strong background in medical record analysis and expert testimony, Christine brings a wealth of knowledge to this topic. Whether you're assisting plaintiff or defense attorneys, this is a session that you can't afford to miss. Claims against NPs are increasing. Understanding their liability is key for an LNC helping attorneys with this type of case. Don't miss the opportunity to gain actionable insights from a leader in the field. Get your seat for our conference taking place November 13, 14, and 15 online at this link, lnc.tips/NOV25. And join us as we delve into nurse practitioner liability with our speaker, Dr. Christine Dorman. It's a great question, Barbara. And before we tackle that, I want to share a story of what happened to a woman who hired me to write her memoir. There were 2 guys in an elevator going up to her company. She ran a large insurance agency. And one guy said to the other, You know that Jan Folk, who we're going to be meeting, she's not going to last in the industry because she's a woman. Jan was in the elevator with them. They clearly had no idea who she was. They sat out in the waiting room, and then Jan's receptionist brought them back in, and both men turned absolutely blood draining out of their faces when they realized who they had been in the elevator with. We're going to share with you, before I answer that question, Barbara, there are a few responses in the chat, and I will read those for the people who are going to be listening to this when we run it as a podcast. Some very interesting responses. One person, Natasha, says she needs to have strong boundaries and not give in to requests that would monopolize her time without compensation. This is a very tempting hook. Kelly said, I'm a recovering people pleaser, and I recognize my tendency to have the hook, but I will pause and work around that. Anthony says his hook is his experience in various areas of nursing. Could this be a plus or minus? Should I focus on specific areas and not so broad? Again, that depends upon Anthony narrowing down to decide who it is that you want to work with and making sure that you're tailoring your language to attract that type of an attorney. Janice's hook is integrity and honesty. Debbie says she's looking forward to returning to work after caring for loved ones. She's had some big events in her life, including the death of her mother and recently her brother. Janera says, my hook would start with, I am a nurse and I may be able to help. Let's look at a couple of things that are coming up before we continue. And we wanted to make sure that we shared with you a workshop that we are doing next week on September 4th on locating and working with expert witnesses. One of the most common requests that LNCs get from attorneys who are handling medical malpractice cases is, can you find me an expert? Like the stereotactic neurosurgeon, for example. This is a skill that is not covered in depth in LNC programs. And if you don't know how to efficiently use your time or effectively locate people, this can become an enormous amount of time spent on fulfilling this request. Our workshop will take you through a set of medical records and give you the opportunity to identify the types of experts that would be needed based on the medical records and have some hands-on experience looking for experts to approach with a summary of the case that you prepare. This is a hands-on workshop that runs from 10 to 4:30 Eastern on September 4th. We are offering you the option to use a discount code if you sign up for this workshop by Thursday morning of this week, 9 a.m. That would be Thursday, the 28th. This discount code will be in effect. The code is PB10, and it goes into the coupon code part of the checkout page. That workshop is going to be recorded, so if you are not able to attend next week and would like the benefit of all the education we're providing, you can sign up for that and register and receive the recordings. The link for locating that page is lnc.tips/finding experts. And Barbara can put it in the chat for you, lnc.tips/finding experts. And the coupon code is PB, stands for Pat and Barbara, or peanut butter, depending on how hungry you are, PB10, lnc.tips/finding experts. And that's all day, September 10th.
Excuse me, Pat, you'll need to enter it. I have no access to enter into the chat.
Okay, I will do that then. And then The other thing that is coming up is in your interviews with attorneys, they may ask you for sample reports to show what you have done with a set of medical records to prepare a screening report or a chronology or a medical summary or an expert report. We have a set of medical records for you that gives you hands-on experience in this course called Report Writing Mastery. I have been running this course with different sets of medical records since I believe 2017 was the first time I started it. It has been the most popular course that I have ever offered. You get the hands-on experience reviewing the case, plus you get my feedback on how you did with the sample reports that you can then use when you're marketing. So Barbara, let's move while I'm putting that in the chat to how you demonstrate, let's see, how do you demonstrate your value during a conversation related to medical records? And then we'll go back to the questions to uncover the attorney's pain.
Sure. So you want to explain how your skills will save the attorney time and improve the outcomes, and give examples. So let's say you're reviewing some medical records having to do with a motor vehicle accident, a T-bone accident, and the individual arrives in the hospital, and there are multiple injuries. And during the hospitalization, the patient is diagnosed with, let's say, compartment syndrome. And perhaps it is recognized 48 hours after the hospitalization. But upon reviewing the records, you see that this individual came in with 20 out of 10 pain and changes in neurovascular assessments. And the only records that you're seeing have to do with the medical records. Well, because they hired you as the legal nurse consultant, you would suggest to the attorney, we should obtain the EMS records. We want to learn more about the accident and the assessments that were performed on the side of the road. And you can learn more there. Was everything done as should be? What types of injuries were identified at that time? Was there a delay in diagnosis upon arrival? Was there compartment syndrome in the emergency room versus then noting it 48 hours later? There have been times that I've participated in cases that I have found issues prior to the admission to the hospital, but they all rolled along together. So oftentimes, I'll give you another example. This is a great one. A patient is transferred from long-term care over to the hospital, and perhaps from a fall and a fractured femur. It wasn't until 5 days later that a skin assessment was performed on this individual, and the hospital identified there was a stage 3 wound to the bottom. Well, you want to know what were the assessments upon arrival, and you find in the medical records there were no skin assessments upon arrival. So then the natural thing for you to say, let's obtain the records from the sending facility to find out, were there skin issues at that facility? Because you and I know that a hospital is going to point the finger to long-term care is going to point the finger to the hospital, but you need to know, where and when was this wound identified? Was it identified at the long-term care, and then while in the hospital, nobody did an assessment? Or is it something that this individual came into the hospital with intact skin, and due to lack of movement and positioning, developed that stage 3 wound? So these are something that you as a nurse with your knowledge and training certainly can assist with. You can describe how you can be the one to decipher, interpret, and summarize the medical records in language that the attorney wants to hear. And as I mentioned, identifying the missing records. I mentioned before, if you're looking at, let's say, a 4 or 5 day stay and there's only, let's say, less than 100 pages of medical records, you're saying, wait a minute, I have no medication administration records. I don't have any physician orders. This is where you can hone in and identify those missing records. And you can find if there's anything else in the records that may impact the patient's credibility on this matter. So you may be working for the plaintiff side, you may be working for the defense side. So it's important to review all of the materials. There are times that I have found in the medical records, incident report filed. Well, while oftentimes incident reports are not discoverable, if a nurse has written in the medical records, incident report filed, that makes it much easier for a plaintiff attorney to request a copy of that incident report. If you are working on behalf of the defense, and whether you are reviewing the records or perhaps you are the nurse expert, oftentimes they will share those incident reports with you, because sometimes those incident reports give you more information than the medical record. I had a situation where the medical record was absent much of the incident of the fall that had occurred, but the incident report had so much information in it, we were able to utilize that and bring that forth. And in that particular situation, the fall that occurred, there were a lot of questions about the patient's memory because of how she had shared a story that didn't quite seem believable. And that story had to do with being left on the floor out in the hallway for 15 to 20 minutes, yelling and screaming, and that people were walking by and laughing at her. Now, we are nurses. I can honestly say in my 40 years of being a nurse, I have never seen a nursing staff ignore a patient's cries and somebody that is on the floor and not help them. But we were able to come up with additional information, such as that incident report, which assisted us for a defense verdict. You, as a legal nurse, can also provide in-depth medical literature that relates to the issues on the case. So if it's medical literature, nursing literature, identifying and supporting the standards of care, if it's a medical negligence case, or perhaps you're looking at that personal injury case of the trauma patient and explaining about fractures and compartment syndrome or falls and, subsequent injuries. So these are so many areas that you as a legal nurse are very valuable in participating and helping your attorney clients. So I'd like to hear from all of you. Is there anything else that you could say to your potential client that is going to show your value? If you could put that in the chat, I would love to see that.
And now we're going to focus on some of the questions that you can ask an attorney during that interview that shows your value. You're looking to see how you can uncover what frustrates them in their law practice, specifically related to medical issues, such as what aspects of working with medical records are most time-consuming for you? Are there any recurring issues that you see in the medical components of your cases? Have you ever been frustrated with communicating with an expert witness? We know that some experts much prefer to talk to healthcare providers as opposed to attorneys. Do you find it difficult to locate qualified experts? Sometimes that's a much bigger issue for the plaintiff attorney than the defense, where the defense will say that for physicians, for example, that physicians will rush to help their fallen brethren, but not necessarily be so excited about pointing a finger at a fallen brethren? Are there cases where a nurse's insight could have changed your outcome? Attorneys who have experience can readily remember situations where they got caught off guard by something that was in the medical record that they didn't know about. And their adversary brings out at a deposition or a trial. And it is a terrible moment for an attorney to be surprised. You've heard that adage, don't ever ask a question that you don't know the answer to if you're an attorney. This is another element of surprise that they also dislike. Do you find it challenging to separate out pre-existing conditions and injuries from those that rose from an accident? This is often an element that attorneys are focused on. What can we claim as the damages? And do you currently handle large volumes of medical records? This is where we excel as legal nurse consultants. So with all of that in mind, I know that there are some responses to your question in the chat, Barbara, that you might want to respond to before we ask the last couple of questions.
I would love to share. I love Maureen's response. If he asks me what I can offer him, I might say, I would be able to help you better if you tell me what are your pain points. So that is an excellent way of going about it, about taking that question and posing that to your client, potential client. And Natalie has said, I'm a very transparent person, and my goal is to work with your interest and need. Are there any specific questions that I can elaborate on more? And that's another great tactic. Debbie suggested talk with the attorney about the number of medications a person is taking related to their age, side effects of these medications, anatomical and physiological changes related to their age in the senior person. Excellent point as well. And Mary Beth has said her 15 years experience analyzing and summarizing personal injury cases. Janice says, I would share my USP, such as more than 5 decades of clinical nursing experience across multiple specialties. And Kelly talked about 25 years in the acute care settings. So a lot of great responses there. So Pat, how do you demonstrate value during the conversation related to the medical records?
Well, you can talk about the role of the LNC in summarizing the records, finding those hidden details that may be buried in mounds of records that will jump out at you because of your medical training. A paralegal or an attorney might not understand the significance of these. You can also stress the value of using the medical records to create summaries that then are effective in helping to locate experts. And we go through in the workshop a very specific part of the day in terms of how you create those summaries. And you can also offer to the attorney that you can help the expert prepare those medical reports or expert reports and prepare that expert for deposition or trial, and then synthesize all of the testimony and all of the reports that are provided by both sides. We want to focus, Barbara, on responding to the attorney who raises objections and red flags that indicates that they may not be a good fit for you. Because let's be clear, not every attorney out there is somebody you want to work with. Just because they have ESQ after their name does not automatically qualify them as desirable. I learned that the hard way by some of the difficult attorneys who came into my business, and I've gotten much better at spotting them when they approach me now. But in the beginning, I thought, oh, they want to hire me And then they start asking questions. So, what are some of those red flags, Barbara?
Well, some of those red flags are when they're pushing for discounts, or, perhaps they are just focusing on the price and saying, I cannot agree to pay you that amount of money. I was envisioning that I would pay you X. Or I had a situation where an attorney, we had a lovely meeting, and he said, I have a great plan for us. I have all these cases I want you to review. I will not pay you a fee. The way you will be paid is once these cases reach some type of resolution, I will give you 20% of the outcome. Well, how does that sound to everybody? That does not sound ethical at all. Not at all. That shows that I would be into this for financial remuneration, and that is so wrong. And we talked about that further, about these cases could last years. There may be nothing in the end, or you're promising a so-called 20%. Again, unethical. And I walked away and I never worked with that attorney. And you don't want to devalue yourself. You also want to pay attention to this potential client. Is he interrupting you? Is he or she showing disrespect or seem really disorganized? Do they not value your input during that time in the meeting? And perhaps we should ask everyone, what other things would you suggest are red flags when you're attending a potential client meeting? I'd love to see your red flags. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask Pat about the best way to close the meeting confidently. Can you share some tips?
Sure, but I'm going to share a few red flags first. I had a sales meeting with an attorney with his son, who was also an attorney, and his son was sitting there with his iPad planning his flight path to Jackson Hole, Wyoming from Florida while he was supposed to be listening to what I was saying. That was the most flagrant inattention I've ever seen. I've had attorneys say to me, I want you to work on this whole bunch of product liability cases involving a specific medication, and we'll pay your bills when we settle the cases. 2, 3, 4 years later, no, I couldn't agree to that. I told him that I had subcontractors I would need to bring in to this project. I couldn't ask them to wait 2 or 3 or 4 years for their payment. I couldn't act as his bank. He ended up using his internal people for those types of cases. You will hear, if I give you 10 cases, will you reduce the hourly rate? That's a frequent ploy that attorneys will offer. Volume discounts. It's still your time, and your time is still valuable. And you don't have any real way of knowing that 10 cases will come in. Maybe you do the first case at a significant discount, and then you don't get any more. And then you have the feeling of having been taken advantage of. Janice says the attorney doesn't maintain eye contact when speaking to her. Christine says an attorney wanted her to review cases even though she identified I've got a conflict of interest. That's a red flag that the vast majority of attorneys would respect and immediately back off and say, oh, if you've got a conflict, then we're done with this conversation. So that's interesting, Christine, that he pushed that, because that's unusual. Body language, Carrie says, being distracted during the meeting. The best way to close this meeting confidently is to ask directly. Don't beat around the bush. Say, do you see us as having the opportunity to work together? And then you pause. I heard some vendors talk about this several years ago. They said what they did, one guy said, I always carry a cigar with me because when I ask the critical question, am I getting the case? I'll stick the cigar in my mouth. He didn't smoke cigars, but he did it to clamp it down on his teeth to prevent him from opening his mouth and diluting the request or saying, oh, but if you can't afford my rate, then I'm willing to negotiate. He stuck that in so he would just stop talking and wait. And that puts the responsibility on the attorney to respond to you. You can summarize as you close the meeting all of the ways that you can assist the attorney, emphasizing the value that you bring. And then be prepared for them to hand you a pen drive with a case on it, set up a system so that they can get those medical records to you through the internet, hand you a physical case. Be prepared to walk out with a case. You'll know that you're getting there when you see the attorney's eyes start floating around the top of their skull. They're looking up thinking, now, which is the good case? Which would be the best case to give Barbara to start with? Then you sit quietly while they're sorting through their itinerary, sorting through their caseload and saying, well, here's one, and this is what I need. Is this something you can help me with? Then it's golden because you've accomplished the objective of your interview. So before we end, Barbara, I want to be respectful of people's time. Let's do a quick recap of what's happening on September 4th and the discount code.
Absolutely. So during our workshop, you will be reviewing some actual medical records. And during that time, you will have the opportunity to collaborate with other legal nurses across the country. You will review the case, you will write a summary, and you will identify the types of experts that you need. We will discuss expert location and how to go about doing that. We will talk about some standards of care as well. So this will be a hands-on workshop where you will review, write an analysis. This analysis you will be able to share forth with potential clients of yours in the future. And this will help guide you when you are reviewing a set of medical records on your own and what steps are needed during that time.
And I'm just confirming the date on my report writing mastery course. It is Tuesday nights that we are doing this. It is a set of 4 classes, and we've added in by popular demand, we've added in a question and answer session that will take place midway through the course so that you can be sure that you are getting your questions answered. That is starting on September 16th and will take place from 8 p.m. to 9:30 Eastern. We'd love to have you join us at the September 4th workshop. That discount code is good only until Thursday, August 28th at 9 a.m. Eastern. And that is the workshop that covers locating experts and communicating and working with them. I did not see any additional questions in the chat. Maureen said she's taken the course and they are golden. Thank you, Maureen. And some other people have commented on the value, particularly of the report writing mastery course. Debbie said she's taken it and has gotten a lot of value. I'm looking for any more messages. Thank you. Natalie asked, if the attorney asks, how many questions can you review per hour? That is a question that has no answer because it depends upon the type of medical record. 40 pages of dictated physician progress notes in an office record would be very different than 40 pages of a hospital record. So your focus is going to be on what you need to extract from that record. You can say to the attorney, after I receive the records and retainer from you, I would be happy to give you an estimate, but you can't do it blindly over the phone. I would say, and I do say, my crystal ball is not working right now. I can't provide you with an estimate without seeing what you have there. Mary Beth says the report writing mastery course was outstanding. And Natalie has just been asked earlier today from a potential client about that question, how long is it going to take you? You have the answer for that now. My crystal ball is in the shop. Yes, I love that, Debbie. Yes, where it stays, it never comes out. Well, thank you for your comments. We've enjoyed sharing this with you. Our next Power Series is going to be the end of September, September 30th. We have a page on Legal Nurse Business that has all of the upcoming programs that we are doing this fall. And you can get there by going to, in fact, I will share my screen to show it. It's probably easier to share my screen than to explain. The main page of Legal Nurse Business has a tile right in the middle called Fall Virtual Events Schedule, and it lists our workshop, the report writing mastery course that I've been sharing with you. We are doing a Power Series at the end of September on video marketing, and that'll be at 3 o'clock Eastern, not at noon, but at 3 o'clock Eastern. We've got a LinkedIn workshop on October 7th to help you spiff up your profile on LinkedIn and get the most from using LinkedIn. And then we have another Power Series on mastering your money mindset on October 14th, with our conference coming up November 13, 14, and 15. So this link is called Upcoming Events, and I will put that into the chat for you.
Pat, while you are putting that into the chat, I want to just wrap up a little bit. One of the things I want to suggest to you as a follow-up after your potential attorney-client meeting is for you to send a thank you note with a brief recap of what you discussed. That is so important, and it shows gratitude that you appreciate the attorney's time, and certainly you would like to work with them in the future. I encourage you to attach any requested materials or perhaps a short outline of how you can assist them. And if you don't hear anything back from them, I encourage you to follow up with a phone call a week later. And please use these tips, and we would love to have feedback from all of you about how successful your future meetings are with your attorney clients or potential attorney clients. And please share back with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate everybody's attention here. Go out and get those interviews set up with attorneys, and also watch your email for the free tip sheet that we're going to be sending to you on mastering an interview on Zoom. That's it for today. Thanks so much.
Have a great day.
In our next episode of Legal Nurse Podcast, you'll have an opportunity to hear from a nurse, Karen Vaca, who works both as a perioperative nursing expert and a clinical nurse in the operating room, as we talk about something that is a type of case that arises from the responsibilities of the OR staff, and that is disruption in skin integrity. Karen, what were some of the topics that we covered?
Some of the key topics that we discussed were assessment on pressure injuries, who is involved in patient positioning, what causes a fire in the operating room, ways to prevent a fire in the operating room, and assessing prepping solutions.
Karen's experience gives you some behind-the-scenes knowledge about how these types of injuries occur, what are the responsibilities of the staff to prevent them, and what you should look for as an LNC when you're evaluating such a case. That's on Legal Nurse Podcast, coming up next. Be sure to catch Karen Vaca's podcast. I'll see you there. Thank you for being part of the Legal Nurse Podcast audience. I'm delighted that you've joined us for this episode. Be sure to go to legalnursebusiness.com and get your free reports, look around the website, pick up some tools that will be useful for you in your legal nurse consulting practice. And be sure to join us for the next episode.